Hello and welcome to Friday's ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the southeast. Jailed, the Kent man filmed joking at a party just hours after murdering a father of 5 and trying to dispose of the body in acid.
The soaring popularity and value of bikes triggers a crime wave, with fewer than 1 in 100 of the thieves being caught.
Also on tonight's programme, if getting fit was your New Year's resolution and you own a dog, this could be for you. The new sport Canicross that's gathering pace across Kent and Sussex.
And the exhibition celebrating the Force's sweetheart Dame Vera Lynn and 9 decades in the public eye. Good evening. A man from Kent has been jailed for life for murdering a father of 5 and trying to dispose of his body in acid.
19-year-old George Knights from Rochester stabbed Stephen Chapman to death at a property in the town in October 2020. He had denied murder but was found guilty by a jury last summer. Well, let's go live to Kit Bradshaw at Maidstone Crown Court, where the hearing concluded in the last hour. Kit, what more can you tell us tonight?
Well, yes, it was around half an hour ago that 19-year-old George Knights, who's from Rochester, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years for the murder of Stephen Chapman, who was 38, and that attack happening in October of 2020. Now, the court heard that George Knights was just 18 years old at the time of that attack, and he was a teenager described as fixated by money and drugs. A bodybuilder, he'd got a tattoo of a snake and dagger on his neck in the week before the killing. Mr. Chapman had gone to Knights' home in order to sell him cocaine, but he never left that property alive. And he was stabbed with considerable force with a military-style dagger to the head. But it's what happened after that fatal blow which really makes this case very unusual. As you said, Knights attempted to dissolve Mr. Chapman's body in a wheelie bin filled with acid. And the court heard how that had been inspired by the hit American TV series Breaking Bad. And the judge, Philip Statman, said it was a concerted effort to desecrate the body and an extreme aggravating feature in this case. And I'm joined now by Temporary Detective Superintendent Gavin Moss from Kent Police, who was involved in that investigation. And Mr. Moss, has George Knights ever shown any remorse for this appalling murder?
Throughout the whole proceedings, George Knights has demonstrated absolutely no remorse whatsoever following the murder of Stephen Chapman. In fact, he demonstrated it at such an early stage after that murder. He went out during the evening afterwards to go to friends for a party. He demonstrated that he's a very callous individual, an individual who has prevented the family by his actions from saying their final goodbyes because it was just simply too dangerous for them to have access to Stephen's body.
Gavin Moss from Kent Police, thank you very much for joining us. And that video recorded in the hours after the killing, we can see a bit of that now.
Rock.
Stephen Chapman was known as Ginger to his family and friends. In an impact statement by his partner, Rebecca Leader, read out today, she said her world was turned upside down and she will never be the same again. Her heart was torn into pieces. George Knights will be in his 40s by the time he is eligible for parole. The judge said he hopes by then he will have learnt the true meaning of remorse.
Kit Bradshaw, thank you very much for that.
In other news, a paramedic killed in a crash between an ambulance and a lorry outside Tunbridge on Wednesday night has been named. Alice Clark was just 21 and only recently qualified as an emergency worker. In a statement, her parents have said she was a beautiful, kind and loving daughter and looked forward to every shift. Police are continuing to appeal for information following the collision on the A21.
British Airways will stop sponsoring Brighton's I360 from November. It's thought the viewing tower made losses of £5 million last year. It currently owes the City Council £40 million in loan repayments. The attraction said it's looking for a new sponsor to take over when the current deal comes to an end.
A mother from Tunbridge has told how she drove 400 miles to Italy so her 9-year-old daughter could have the COVID vaccine. Under 12s are not yet being vaccinated in the UK unless they are clinically vulnerable. Alice Colombo said she'd made the journey through snow last month because in Italy she was entitled because of dual citizenship.
I absolutely believe in choice. I appreciate that for every one parent who thinks like me, you'll probably find about 10 who think I'm completely loopy. And I think parents should be given the choice. Ultimately, I've had the jab myself. I've had all 3 doses. Why would I not want to give that protection to my daughter?
The Army is stepping in to help South Central Ambulance Service cope with staff shortages and COVID pressures. The service provides non-emergency patient transport services in Sussex and Surrey. 32 military personnel will assist. They will work alongside paramedics until the end of March. Around 1,800 service personnel are already deployed to assist the NHS with COVID.
Next tonight, it's been revealed that less than 1% of criminals who stole bikes in Brighton and Hove last year were actually caught. It highlights a growing problem with expensive e-bikes and high-end models being targeted.
Well, Sussex Police says the figures don't tell the whole story and the force takes bike theft very seriously. But there are plans to provide more secure on-street storage for riders who can't keep their bikes indoors, as Malcolm Shaw explains.
The once modest bicycle has come a long way, with some incorporating carbon fibre and others boasting battery power. They can cost thousands of pounds and inevitably become a target for thieves, as Joanna Duncan knows all too well. She'd only had her e-bike for 7 weeks when it was stolen from her front garden, even though it was secured with 2 sturdy D-locks.
It's a very odd-looking bike, so I haven't ever seen another one around here. So I'm hoping that someone will notice it. There's got to be a way that we can get around this to support people and help people that lose this, because if you can't afford a car and your only means of transport is taken away from you, then it's a sad state of affairs.
Here in Brighton and Hove, over 900 bicycles were stolen last year, but only 2 people were charged. Sussex Police say they take all reports of bike theft very seriously and investigate as fully as they can. They told us, while there is a low number of charges relating to theft of a pedal bike, the return of many stolen bikes are often recorded under other crimes. For example, where an offender has been charged with burglary and stolen items, including bikes, are discovered in their possession. Campaigners say that across the UK, the number of bike thefts has actually fallen in recent years.
Between 1995 and the late teens of this century, it dropped by about half across England and Wales. What we are seeing, though, is more and more people cycling, so that means more and more people are aware of these issues. And with the rise in e-bikes and more high-end bikes, there's more of a reason for thieves to take bikes.
Now, to try to make sure people have somewhere safe to keep their bikes, the City Council is planning to install 100 lockable hangars like this on the streets. But it's costing £500,000 and there's concern they may be vandalised.
My concern is that these hangars won't be looked after properly. So I've walked here today past communal bins. Every single one was broken. It had missing bits. It was covered in graffiti, covered in stickers. Some of them were burnt out completely and not replaced. So I fear that the hangars will be treated in the same way.
Cities like Brighton and Hove have gone to great lengths to encourage cycle use to cut pollution and congestion. But more bikes on the streets means more opportunities for theft. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News.
Well, with so many bikes being stolen and so few being recovered, what can be done to prevent theft? Well, back to Malcolm now, who's live for us at a bike shop in Tunbridge Wells tonight. Malcolm, what measures can bike owners take?
Well, look, with fantastic bikes like these costing many hundreds, if not thousands of pounds, it probably makes sense to think about taking out some insurance so that if the worst does happen, you're going to get something back. But how can you stop your bike being stolen in the first place? Well, Johnny Preen is going to talk us through some gear that might help. Johnny, I guess the first thing is invest in a decent lock.
Yeah, absolutely. So like many of our customers are purchasing top-end bikes. like this Oro Venturi signature on the wall, carbon frame and electronic gearing, and hopefully I'm thinking the customer buying a bike like that would keep it safe at home. So thinking about security at home in the first place is a good thing. But if you're using a bike like a hybrid to have in town, something like a kryptonite combination lock would be something to start thinking about. Or you can have it with a key if that's easier for you.
Moving something a bit chunkier?
Absolutely. So moving up the scale, you can go for a D-lock with a cable lock as well. So double locking your bike is worth thinking about. So locking through the frame on a fixed point and then making sure that both wheels are locked as well. So
and this
not
one,
just the frame.
this another lock. This one's got an alarm built in.
Yep. So again, working up the spectrum, it's got an alarm built in. These are also reinforced steel plates. So again, having sound as a deterrent is definitely worth having. It will work.
Now, with cars, technology's made it really difficult to steal cars these days. Is that something we're now seeing coming in with bikes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like cars have tracking devices, we are now using tracking devices.
And this
in
is
the
one here,
industry.
I think, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. So it's a GPS device that you can connect to your phone. So as soon as your bike is moved from a fixed point, you will be notified on your phone with GPS mapping, and you'll know where your bike is, and it works all around the country nationally, and you can be notified from there. So
you stand a chance of getting your precious bike back.
Absolutely.
Okay, Johnny, that's all very, very good advice. So I guess it's a case, as it's always been with bikes, of lock it or lose it.
Indeed. Malcolm, live in Tunbridge Wells tonight. Thank you.
More of the day's news now, and 2 men and a dog have been stabbed in Ashford. Police were called to a house in Beechholm Drive last night where 4 men reportedly attacked a teenage boy, a man in his 20s and their pet. Both were taken to hospital and the dog is receiving treatment at the local vets. Officers remain at the scene.
A man who attempted to smuggle drugs with a street value of more than £16 million through Dover has been jailed. Patrick Deffy was caught with cocaine and heroin in his van. He's been sentenced to 10 years.
Refuse workers in Eastbourne have been offered a 7% pay rise to try and bring to an end the ongoing dispute. The council says it will also replace a small tea hut with a welfare unit as part of a deal to end a walkout that began back on New Year's Eve. But the GMB says talks so far have been a total failure and the council's numbers simply are not adding up.
And police have returned a dog to its owner 8 years after she was stolen from the garden of her home. Sussex police captured the moment Cassie, the Cocker Spaniel, was reunited with her family. She was discovered in a raid following a tip-off, along with her 3 new puppies. You're watching ITV News Meridian here in the southeast. Thanks for your company this evening. Coming up, returning an unwanted Christmas gift. What are your consumer rights? We'll find out.
Great advice there, so do stay tuned. And if you want to get fit this year, we could have just the thing. We look at the sport that you can do with your 4-legged friends.
For more on all of our stories, do go to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us on 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also get in touch with us on Facebook and on Twitter.
And the ITV Evening News Hour continues with the national and international news at 6:30. With more details tonight, let's cross to London and Charlene White.
Coming up, we have a special report from the NHS frontline as hospitals struggle to deal with increasing numbers of COVID patients, just as many of their staff are forced off work. New travel rules come into force. We have all the details as bookings surge, plus
the winner is Sidney Poitier.
Remembering the trailblazing actor Sir Sidney Poitier, the first black man to win a Best Actor Oscar. Join us for all those stories and more from 6:30.
But first, do you know your rights when it comes to returning those unwanted Christmas gifts? Because you might have a lot more power than you actually think.
Yeah, whether you're shopping online or in person, under the Consumer Rights Act, almost anything can be refunded or exchanged, but you have to move fast, as Amrit Birdie can explain.
Sadly, not everyone gets exactly what's on their Christmas list, and every January retailers see gifts returned, refunded or exchanged. But there are many of us who struggle to get our money back or don't have the confidence to fight for a refund. According to the 2015 Consumer Rights Act, anything you buy must be satisfactory and as described. Goods must also be fit for purpose and last a reasonable length of time. In other words, not fall apart straight away. You can get a full refund within 30 days for faulty items. After that, you lose the short-term right to return what you've bought and you'll have fewer rights. In Seaford, people have had mixed success when it comes to making returns.
I'm renovating, as you can see now, so I'm buying a lot of stuff, and half the time it's slightly damaged, you can't find the email, and you just give up, unless it's an expensive item.
It's much harder to exchange with the internet because you have to send everything back, whereas coming into a shop, even if they give you a token, then at least you're getting something back.
The first thing to know about your consumer rights at this time of year is that the rights are held with the person who purchased the item and not the person who was gifted it. So the first thing to do is look to see if you've got a gift receipt in your wrapping paper. But if you don't have one of those, the first thing you're going to need to do is have a conversation with the person who bought you something.
What are some of the common misconceptions people have when it comes to their right to a refund?
One really big misconception about your refund rights is that you can't return something that was bought in the sale. You can. If you bought it in a store or online, regardless, if it's faulty, you still have the same protections under the Consumer Rights Act. You can return it within 30 days and get a full cash refund, or you have 6 months and they get a go at repairing it or replacing it.
Your consumer rights do not change when you shop online, but consumer affairs expert Felicity Hanna says the hassle of returning online purchases puts many people off.
I think in the pandemic, people's shopping habits really changed. Obviously, the shops were closed, everybody turned to online shopping. If you shop online and it arrives and you don't like it, it is so easy, and I've done it myself. You just leave it sitting in a pile, sitting in its box, and then the time passes and you're too late to take it back. And I just think that is such a waste when people don't actually go after their consumer rights. They don't look after themselves. They end up with stuff they don't want. And I think some companies actually really play on that hassle to encourage you to keep products.
So, the next time you get something you don't like for Christmas, remember it's your right to swap it for what you want. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
This is Canicross, trail running with your dog. It originated as a way of keeping sled-pulling dogs active and trained out of season. And it's now a sport in its own right that's caught on around the world. This is what dog owners in Preston Park in Brighton thought of the idea.
They like to do what the humans are doing. They tend to imitate us, because they kind of love us and stuff. So, to kind of display their feelings for us. So, I think they'd really enjoy it, yeah. You just got to be careful not to over-exercise the dogs.
I don't like the idea, to be perfectly honest. I always think it's bad for the dogs. You see some people running and the dog's just doing it to keep up with the owner, but I don't think it's right.
I probably wouldn't consider it, but I don't really run much. But I'm sure that's quite fun for a lot of people and for the dogs, yeah?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, get some sport in.
He agrees.
Mari Baxter has been doing Canicross with her dog Flash for a couple of years.
It was a way of giving him exercise, let him run, and then also get myself fit at the same time. A lot of people ask, will I get pulled over? But the Canicross belt that we wear pulls from your waist, from your hips. Whereas if you were running and you were holding your dog in a normal lead-in hand, you get pulled forward. Whereas this, you're pulling from your middle centre of gravity, so you're less likely to get pulled over. Left!
As well as the specialist harness equipment, dogs that do Canicross are taught to obey commands to change direction while running. It's recommended that beginners looking to take up the sport get tuition from trainers like Lindsay Johnson.
It's not just a case of buying the kit, putting it on your dog and going for a run. That would just be theoretically just running with your dog, which is great, but Canicross is a specific sport which entails a lot of consistent training, a lot of focus work, and It takes a lot of months and years, you know, to form a team and a good, strong bond between the dog and the owner. So there's a good understanding of each other.
Dogs shouldn't start doing Canicross until they're at least 1 year old. And experts say there are other considerations too.
You can do it with any breed. I mean, I think one of the things that you really do need to be careful about is your dog's general condition. And there are some breeds where you might want to be particularly careful, like short-nosed dogs. And particularly, it's one other thing to be very conscious about is that when dogs are running a lot, they can get very, very hot. So even when the weather is cold, they may actually start to get overheat. So that's something you've got to be really, really careful about.
A pre-COVID growth in popularity in Canicross was slowed by the pandemic, but it's a growth that's expected to pick up pace in the future. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Now, an exhibition celebrating the life of Forces sweetheart Dame Vera Lynn gets underway tomorrow at Ditchling Museum of Art and Crafts.
Dame Vera, who lived in the village, was patron of the museum, and this display will chronicle 9 decades of her life in the public eye. It will include hundreds of items, many on show for the first time, as Tony Green reports.
Even after a lifetime in the limelight, there are facets to the Forces sweetheart we don't know. A new exhibition opening tomorrow profiles Dame Vera Lynn not just as a singer, but also a charity campaigner, wartime diarist, and even an amateur artist. For Virginia Lewis-Jones, however, she was also mummy.
A lot of these things that are surrounding us today, you must have seen them all of your life. What's it like to see them in a museum exhibition?
Oh, absolutely fantastic. You know, there's such a good cross-section here with the paintings and the clothes and photographs and letters, etc. All the pieces here, the paintings and the clothes and everything, so synonymous with her, obviously. Also, I think one has to make a note that she was probably one of the first women after the suffragettes who actually did things which a lot of women didn't before, like the women who worked in the armament factories, etc. And she led the way by going out to Burma, of all places, and singing in the middle of the jungle. And so she was very much a leader, I think, for women's, if you want loosely, the women's movement.
The challenge for Ditchling Museum was to select the exhibits that best told the story of Dame Vera from a vast archive.
Dame Vera Lynn has been in the public eye for decades. What is it that you can tell us about this woman that we don't already know in this exhibition?
Well, I think the whole putting the exhibition together has been a real voyage of discovery for us too, and I think we all feel much closer to Dame Vera as a result of getting to know her through the objects that represent her life. But I think one of the real revelations were the paintings, and they range from portraits like these, botanical watercolours, landscapes, so it's been absolutely extraordinary.
And you've got her diary from Burma as well.
Yes, that's a really special piece. It's a tiny little Collins diary, and in theory she was supposed not to keep any records while she was out there, but she wrote very sort of terse, cryptic notes, and it really brings home what a traumatic voyage it was, really. It's just an extraordinary thing to read.
Dame Vera's legacy is destined to endure. The exhibition runs until April the 18th. Tony Green, ITV News, Ditchling.
So many lovely memories there.
She was so talented, wasn't she?
Now, Stacey, it's the weekend, so I think we know what that means for the weather. Let's get the details with Amanda.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello again. Well, if you're making plans for the weekend, you can expect mixed conditions across the region. So Saturday, not the most inspiring day. Outbreaks of rain and strong gusty winds. However, if things go to plan on Sunday, for most of us it will be largely dry. So we've got low pressure in charge of things. It's driving this weather system from west to east as we go through tonight and into tomorrow. You can see some of that rain will be heavy for a time with some strong gusty winds. But on Sunday, give or take the odd shower, for most of us, it is looking much quieter. Now, in the meantime, for the rest of this evening, still the chance of the odd shower, then dry with clear skies and cold, frosty with some icy stretches at first. Although by the end of the night, the next system starts to work its way across us, and that's going to give many of us a wet start to the day tomorrow. So cloudy with outbreaks of rain, and that rain is going to pep up late morning and into the afternoon, producing some heavy downpours and some very strong winds too, especially along coastal areas. Although it looks like it will start to improve from the west, and temperatures a little milder than what they have been in recent days. Highs there at around 10 or 11 degrees, and you can see there the sea states are rough. And speaking of which, we've got high tide at Brighton just after 3 o'clock in the morning, and then around 3:15 in the afternoon. So Sunday morning gets off to a cold start to the day. There will be some frost in places. As I say, there might be the odd shower around, but for most of us it is looking largely dry out there with some bright or sunny spells. And then the heads up for next week, well, overall a lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain at times, but temperatures will gradually be recovering. Bye-bye.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
And in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Thank you so much for your company this evening. Have yourself a lovely weekend. Good night.
From us, good night.